Hey guys, welcome to a new Delta Force video. Today I want to go through a few of the settings that I think are important for you to check and that you might have not on your radar. So first of all, we have automatic airborne mantle. This is something you have to decide for yourself, but I would recommend turning it on because it can be really useful. What it does is basically that when it is turned off and you run and then jump, it won't mantle over this obstacle. So if you miss your jump a little bit and your mantle, it won't mantle at all. And you might be standing in front of something and jumping and it's not mantling because you missed that sweet spot where it should mantle. Now, with this option turned on, what happens is that when you jump towards something, it mantles automatically. And that threshold that you have where it mantles or it doesn't mantle is definitely a lot bigger. Next up, we have weapon switching via scroll wheel, and this is turned on by default. And here it doesn't matter if you turn it on or off. If I turn it off, it still switches weapons via the scroll wheel. So this option is unfortunately not working. It would be really useful because what can happen in the game, since spotting is on the scroll wheel as well, is that you accidentally switch while spotting, but you cannot turn it off even though the setting is right there. So it doesn't matter if you keep it on or off. And then we have independent tactical stance control. And if this is enabled, and I would highly recommend to enable this, that means that when you have a canted sight equipped, you can not only switch between your main and your canted sight while aiming down sights, but you can also switch between them when not aimed down sights. You can only see that you change it with that little notification that comes up, but this will give you the option to basically change your scope while on the fly or on the run or whatever. So you won't have to aim down sights, but you can change it for a certain situation and then aim down sights and you are already in the right optic. And you can still change it while you are aim down sights. So with this option, you basically have the best of both. And then we have scope magnification adapts automatically. And this is a bit hard to explain, but I can show you. But it only works if you use a different FOV than the default FOV. So when you go over to graphics, you have the FOV, and this is set to 90 by default, which I think is a good FOV. But if you change it up or down, you will also feel a difference in that first setting that I mentioned. So if I go up to 120, for example, and I keep that scope magnification adapts automatically to off, what my game is doing is that it zooms from FOV 120 down to 90 when I'm aiming down sights. And when I turn this option on, what happens is that I don't have that much of a zoom because the game only zooms in by the magnification that the scope actually has, or whatever optic you have. So if it's 1.25, then it zooms in by 1.25, but not more. If you like the additional zoom and you have your FOV changed to a different value than the default FOV, set it to off. So it will give you this additional zoom. If you don't like the additional zoom, set it to on. FOV itself is personal preference if you like to see a lot of your surroundings, but have a bit of a fisheye effect and your targets will appear further away. You can set it up to 120. If you don't like that, set it down to a lower value. I wouldn't recommend setting it to 60 because that's a bit too close. Then your targets will appear closer, but you will have to turn a lot more to see anything of your surroundings. So I think that the default FOV of 90 is actually pretty much perfect, and just maybe a little bit around that if you want to adjust it. And another option that we have is that by default, turret turning is disabled from vehicle turning. So if you drive with a vehicle, you can freely aim and freely turn the vehicle, and both is not bound to each other, which is pretty cool, and I would recommend keeping this the way it is. But if you don't like that, you just go to settings and turn turret locked while turning vehicle on. This is turned off by default, and what happens now is when you have this turned on is that when your vehicle turns, your turret turns as well, and you're basically dragging around that turret the whole time if you want it or not. And it also feels a lot less agile and a lot less spinny and a bit more like glued to the vehicle. I don't like it at all, but if the normal controls feel somewhat weird to you, maybe you want to try out that option. What is helpful as well is that you have an option to mute Squadmates' marking voice. So if you have a squadmate who likes to spam the ping button and is permanently just spotting and marking, and you have this voice in your ear the whole time that your squadmate has spotted someone, you can turn it off right here. And you won't hear them anymore. You will still see the pings, but you won't hear them anymore. Then what I have changed as well is invert aircraft vertical input, but I always fly inverted, so that's also a bit of personal preference. It just feels better for me. You have to try that out for yourself, but I have turned it on. Then at controls and combat, there are a few things that I have changed. First of all, I like crouch to be on toggle on the control key. So you basically move control from hold to toggle, and then it unbinds C as a key for crouch toggle. And what I did instead was bind prone to C, so I have it in reach of my thumb. What I did as well is to select toggle for lean left and right, because I found that is a lot more helpful. So you can toggle it left and right when you want to lean, and that gives you the option to also move around while you are leaning, and you don't need 10 fingers to do that. And then for aim, of course, I've put it to hold, because it just feels weird to toggle your scope every time you want to aim down sights. Then for the screen, what I did as well is to put minimap rotation to on, which means by default it is off. And if you look at the minimap, it means that the minimap is static and I'm turning inside the minimap. And this can make it hard sometimes to find your way to enemies because you have to identify where you actually are. But with the option turned on, you are basically the center of the map and the minimap is rotating around you. And that makes it a lot easier to find out where you have to go and where the enemies actually are, because you just need to basically follow the map and you can see where it turns and rotates. And then for the minimap icon scale, this might be interesting for you, because this defines how big different icons are on the minimap. May it be the objective, may it be resupply stations, enemies, whatever. You can set it up a lot, which means that icons appear a lot bigger on your big map and also up there on the mini map. And I would set it down to something in between. I think the 80-85 value that it has by default is pretty alright. It gives you a good overview of the map and of its icons, but if they are too small for you, you know where to find them. And then on graphics, I have everything on ultra, just how the game defines it. That works pretty well for me. It runs pretty good and still looks good. VSync is off, of course. And then in audio, I also didn't change anything. I just turned off the voice chat for my microphone and for the Squadmates, because that's just what I do. I'm not the biggest fan of voice chat, I gotta admit that. So I always turn it off.